Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's Voices of Value session. It's a roundtable series curated by Source that brings together industry leaders for insightful discussions on challenges, successes, and then, of course, the pivotal role of technology within your industry. As you know, today's discussion is focused on unlocking ERP's power, fueling growth in the mid-market industries. Before we kick off, I do want to remind you that we are recording the session, that it will be available on demand afterwards, and that this is an interactive forum. You'll see many of us here on camera. We do encourage all attendees to come on camera if you feel comfortable or in a space to do so and contribute to the dialogue. If you'd like to ask a question, you can use the raise your hand feature. This is just a normal Teams. It's not a special virtual event or a webinar one. You can raise your hand. We'll call on you. You can also, of course, leverage the chat feature, and we'll be able to converse with you there as well. Today, I'm joined by Simon, the associate partner, and Rick Place, a partner for Cisco Plan Reply, and they're going to help lead the discussion today. Rick is a partner at Reply with over 20 years of experience in the SAP ecosystem and has played a key role in establishing and growing the U.S. business, focusing on sales, marketing, recruiting, and partnerships. Rick works closely with clients and partners to tailor consulting solutions for projects while leading a team to ensure successful delivery. Welcome, Rick.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, next I'd like to introduce Simon, who is an associate partner at Cisco Plan Reply with over 25 years of experience. This is spanning functional consulting areas in finance to managing global SAP programs. He provides program and project management, guidance to customers across various industries, also while handling internal management responsibilities. With a background in both consulting and industry, Simon brings expertise in IT management, SAP, process management, and process mining, delivering SAP services across 5 continents. So welcome, Simon.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Looking forward to a good interactive session.
Yeah. So, and then finally, for those of you who may not be familiar with the Cisco Plan Reply organization, they are a global SAP Gold partner. They are certified in SAP S/4HANA Cloud with extensive focus in the manufacturing industries, including continuous, repetitive, and discrete. Their SAP practice encompasses around 3,000 consultants globally across PMOs, OCM, functional, and technical, with global programs supported largely by teams in the US and in Europe. So now that I've covered all the basic boring stuff, I'm excited to jump into the conversation. So just to kind of help set the stage, Simon, I mentioned that you have, over 25 years of experience in this space, and working with mid-market organizations. What are some of the challenges that you see organizations are facing today?
Yeah, I reckon what we're really seeing out there, right, is there's just a lot more competition in the mid-market. That's been driven by, I think, a few things, right? The rapid innovations that are going on. You think of how we used to approach our customers a few years ago. That's changed pretty dramatically. And that innovation has sort of driven up the competition, how you can reach your customers, how you can be better than your competitors every day, right? Every time you talk to a customer, they're looking for things faster and faster. That's certainly what I'm seeing in the certainly seen from a competition point of view, right? So where it's leading to is a bit of a race to be more agile, more digital, I guess, in more modern words, right? That push to be digital's always been there, right? It really, really ramped up in the COVID days. They're a few years behind us now, but I think it's just exacerbated that more than anything, right? It was always there, it really pushed it on. What we're feeling and seeing in the market is that push hasn't really subsided, right? If anything, it's given everybody a taste for it and they want more. Another thing we're seeing out there that's it's sort of causing a bit of grief in mid-market is there's a lot of aging platforms. SAP is contributing to that, of course, with their deadlines around ECC. But a lot of these platforms are being heavily customized, right? And they carry a lot of technical debt, which is not just expensive to maintain and run, right? It also slows down that innovation and cuts down on the agility. Every time you touch something, it You know, you have to think a little bit deeper, a little bit more. Where does it go? What does it touch? Does it works its way through the organisation? And I guess the other thing we're seeing out in the market, right, is people actually seeing the cloud mindset, the push to the cloud, as being part of their strategy to get on top of this increased agility, get rid of some of the technical debt, and move forward at pace. Right, beat out your competition.
Yeah, I think those are all great points that you touched on. And certainly for those, joining us, I'd love to hear from you, whether via the chat, if what Simon shared, resonates with you and something that your organization is facing, or if, there are things, that you also, that you didn't mention that we want to touch on today. So again, just wanting to keep this as interactive as possible. We're really here to answer questions and provide an opinion on what's going on in your organizations. Simon, you mentioned digital transformation, and I think a lot of us are kind of tired of hearing that word. But it's a way to speed up your business, to keep up with customer demands. I'm wondering, for those who are, looking to do digital transformation, who are, facing these challenges, the next natural question is, okay, I've identified the problem, but where do I start, right? We all know what's wrong. How do I get my organization on a path to start fixing it?
Yeah, great. That's a great question, right? Our approach always, which should any business, right, is to look at what the long-term strategy of your organisation is, right? I'm sure it's not the strategy of the organisation is not just to do a digital transformation, right? It's underpinning something, right? So understand what the strategy of your organisation is, and then start to align all your activities to that strategy. If you don't, sure, you'll get some short-term gains. It's out there, you can do that, and maybe tactically that's a good thing for now, right? But if you really want to get that long-term benefit, avoid revisiting decisions, you really need to align with your strategy, right? Once you get past that strategic mandate, you need to sit down and say, right, what processes really enable me to achieve my strategy? What's critical for us to be able to meet our strategic goals? Once you sort of have that laid out a little bit for yourself, then you step into what tools do I need? How can I enable, how can I be faster? How can I make these processes more efficient? Okay, once get through that, so you've then sort of got your strategy aligned, you've got your high level process set aligned, you've got some tools, tools are aligned, and then you can really start to get into the nitty gritty of it, of selecting packages or something appropriate for you. Now, one of the things SAP offers in that last step really is something called a DDA, or a digital discovery assessment. And that's a great tool to sort of really start to move that along.
Yeah, and that's a great transition. Can you share a little bit more about the DDA and what that is exactly?
I should exactly. Thank you. Sorry, I shouldn't have just thrown that out there.
It's just another acronym in the sea of acronyms that we have, right?
Of course, right. It's an SAP call. We have to throw a few acronyms around it. It wouldn't be appropriate. Right. So what the DDA is an online tool that's there to help customers and partners qualify SAP's products for that particular business. It's ERP centric, I'd say, right? And the first thing is there, it's really ERP centric, but it also allows you to put in things like CX or Fieldglass or Ariba or other SAP's cloud solutions that may help enable your business. You work through integrations, so you can trot out all the integration systems are integrated to you that are critical for you. Localizations, a lot of businesses, especially in mid-market these days, are ever expanding. It could be across the border to the north or to the south, or there could be something out in Europe or Asia Pac. So you can call that stuff out. But then once you get past that type of high level work, you can then get into selecting your industries. Now, A lot of businesses are getting pretty diverse, so you may have one or more industries set. And what this allows SAP to do is when we get down to the next step, we're looking at the processes by line of business. It highlights those typical processes that SAP see across their portfolio of customers, right? So if you were to go in and select sales and distribution type, there's a wholesale distributor type business, right? It will go through and highlight saying the typical wholesale distribution customer has these types of things in sales and these types of things in logistics. Right? They're only highlighted. It doesn't mean you only lock down to those. You may have a choice. You come through and say, no, look, that really doesn't apply to us. Or, okay, that one wasn't highlighted, but that's something that we really, because of what we do in particular, that we'd really want included in that scope. The nicer thing about it, it's not just sort of tip it out on the table once you've done it. You put in, if there's something in your business or in your system or in your process set at the moment that really gives you a competitive advantage in your industry there, we try and call that out as well, right? It's important to know because the last thing you need to do is slap in the system and cut away your competitive advantages. Once you bundle all that up, right, so we've now gone through the integrations, the localizations, a process set, any particular customizations, SAP then have 50 qualifying questions that they go through, and in particular areas of the cloud products, they'll say, hey, if this is something the customer needs to do, you need to go out and check to make sure that the functionality is rich enough and will cover off everything that's needed. Get through those qualification questions, you then send it off to a product guardian, right? So SAP, it isn't just a sales tool, right? SAP aren't just saying, oh, of course, yeah, put all this information in, and of course, SAP is your solution, right? They're, SAP grows your solution. It's really, they're taking a lot of due diligence around this and send it off to a product guardian who goes through and vets it, and they will come back with questions. Particularly in those qualifying areas where there could be some interpretation, they come back and drill down in those, or they feel you're missing something in the process set. They'll come back and question, say, you selected this and this, but you didn't choose that. Is there good reason for this? But it's a really solid tool, vetting tool, right? And once you get out the back end of it, decision makers in your organisation should feel fairly comfortable that you've put it through a good rigorous review. That when you say, hey, SAP Grow, for instance, will work for me, you've done the diligence behind that to really justify that decision.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you mentioned it or not. Is this DDA assessment, is it just for organizations running SAP today, or is it for just anyone kind of making an ERP evaluation?
No, that's for anybody making an ERP evaluation, right? It's fairly democratic that way. There's a lot of plain English in there. There's a little bit of SAP in there as well, right? That's I think centric for any organisation. There's a little bit of their terminology in there, but it's a really democratic process, right? It doesn't matter if you're coming off of ECC, R3 or JD Edwards, right? Mm-hmm. You could get value out of going through the DDA process.
Yeah, and Rick, Simon, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. Sorry, thanks for catching that. I mean, Simon, I agree, and I think from experience, our customers all talk about digital transformation, right? And if you run a DDA, our SAP friends will get an alert, and they will expect you to make a rise or a grow move. We're a little bit more pragmatic in that, right? The tool really provides a platform for a conversation. And we've had times where, we may run that just with a CIO who's been with an organization for a long time, where he or she knows the ins and outs, and keep it at a little bit more high level. We've also had customers that dive in a little bit deeper. And I think, Simon, I'm the putting my sales hat on here. I think one of the differentiators for us is it's a baseline platform for us to get an output based off of facts that we can then use as a conversation to go provoke the business around thoughts of improvements through efficiency or streamlined process improvement. So I think it's been really helpful, especially as the evolution continues, that employees work from wherever they need or want. We'd love for them to all be in the office every day. I'm sure everybody on this call agrees. Those days are over. So having processes that really can enable a business, given the distributed workforce, is really an important output that we find as a good conversation point to include the business.
Yeah, that I agree, Rick, and not to get hung up, but I know we've got, folks on the line from diverse backgrounds. You use the word grow and rise. That may not mean mean anything to some people that might be like, are we having plants? What's going on? Can you just walk through that very high level?
In addition to being a global gold partner of SAP, we sell plants. No, so good catch. Thank you. I live, breathe, eat the SAP machine. So for those of you unfamiliar, SAP's latest offering comes in two flavors. Carrie wants a plant. Cool. So the S4 side can be on a multi-tenant public cloud where you're really adhering very, very largely to SAP's best practices, or you can be in a quote unquote RISE environment, which is a private tenant where you can configure the system in a little bit more detail to take in intricacies of your organization.
No, I appreciate that clarification. So, at a basic level, the DDA is a good starting point to say which environment is best for my organization. Can we leverage best practices and go with a little more of that out of the box functionality, or do we need to be in a private, more customizable environment?
Just disappointed that only Carrie wants a plant. Okay, not a very green audience.
I'll take a question, Fern. That's fine.
Sorry, go ahead.
I know
you get a plant. You get a plant.
There's a lot of, assessments and different things out there that people hear. And I think there's, oh gosh, not another assessment. How much time and talent is, and resources is this going to take from my team? Can you walk us through what the commitment is from an organization perspective to get this, accomplished?
Yeah. Rick touched on a little bit earlier, right? It can be a bit of a tailored approach, right? If we want to take, if you've got an IT organisation or CIO that's very business knowledgeable, we can sit down and work through the DDA with him and maybe a couple of members of his team, right? They tend to know a little bit more than nitty gritty. My personal feeling and what I much prefer is taking a few of the experts out of the business, right? The people that really live it and breathe it and understand what's really important to them. And sort of a good cross-functional team, right? Because you need that broad viewpoint to really get to the right, to the right thing, and then work through the DDA. Time-wise, I'm a consultant, right? It depends, but I'd say probably 5 to 10 hours online, right? And because I guess one of the things I should have said earlier, the tools only available to SAP and partners, right? So you generally you work with somebody and one of those organisations to work through there. Me being a delivery guy, I'd love getting into the nitty bit of the detail a little bit and understand and push and poke and prod when people say, yeah, of course we have this QM process, Simon. I'll say, okay, really, what do you really dig and do in there? So find it's good value. It helps us as an organisation to understand the customer's business. But it's two-way street, right? As well, it could be stuff that the customer isn't aware of in there, especially if they're a non-SAP customer. And you can, from the tool, you can drill down into the SAP best practice, right? And it's got all the process flow and the content, etc., behind the best practice to help flush that out, as well as has the sort of pricing boundaries in there, right? So if there's something whiz bang and fantastic out there that you must have, but it's another SAP product, it allows you to call that out as well, right? So I think it adds a lot of transparency to it. So for investing 5, 10, 12 hours, huge amounts of value for an organisation.
Yeah, and I love what you said about business and IT. I think, in today's environment and culture, it really does take both sides to get, something like this pushed through. So I love that, your approach is to have representatives on both sides. This is not just a pure IT initiative. It's not pure business. It's really talking to each other and putting that together.
No, in fact,
Um,
whenever Simon and I have gone out to see a customer and we only have IT people in the room, not that there's anything wrong with that, a business transformation project can't be driven only by the IT organization. It needs to be
mhm.
sponsored, led by an executive on the business side, and you need deep business involvement and participation. Yes, so we really push when we do reviews with a DDA or without that the business is certainly represented.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And for those, I know some folks joined late. If you have questions or, talk on a specific topic, certainly we're to have today's discussion, but this is your time with some great experts who've been there before. So please come forward and we're happy to, put questions in the chat and answer those in real time as well. So while you're thinking of those questions, okay, you've done the DDA, you've got business, you've got IT. Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, Rick would say let's sign the SOW and start working, I guess.
It seems seems like a reasonable answer.
That's how fast it goes.
Yeah, always. Right. Yeah. I mean, once you come out of that, right, it's really, and you that's the point you're going to make a selection, get your business justification around it and start aligning the team that's going to really work on the project. Right now, this could be a different group of people, right? I think one of the great things about some of the newer methodologies that SAP have is the inclusion early of a lot broader view of the business people and seeing the system early. All right. So once you get out the DDA, now's the time to start getting the business justification together. Hopefully, this is sort of a step along the way already, and then once start forming your team up, get that real cross-functional team in and start aligning them, making sure everybody's aligned with the strategy, and off you go. Right, then select a tool, select a partner, and start your transformation.
Yeah, and I'm gonna deviate a bit from our planned talk track here. I think the team is so important when we're looking at a large initiative across an organization, across multiple lines of businesses and teams. Rick, I'll direct this question to you. When you think back to all the projects and all the organizations that you worked with, the ones that have been the most successful, just from an adoption kind of change management perspective, what does that core team look like? I think from an Ascend Source perspective, in my experience, you have to get those ingredients right. And so I think sometimes organizations don't put enough onus on the team and that dynamic. So I'd love you to just speak a little on that.
Yeah, the projects that move probably the smoothest with the least amount of, kind of meandering, start with the executive leadership. Typically, because these are larger projects and programs, the IT organization is probably our first point of contact. But we quickly then learn and move in a direction that once we have the right vernacular about that customer, that we're able to talk to a CFO, a COO, a controller, a director of supply chain, a planning person, the warehouse, to make sure that we have, the right ingredients, to use what you said earlier. So I think the representation is needed from IT, but also from the finance side, the logistics side. And then as we move into the project, it is important to have an executive leader be the sponsor and the spokesperson, and they can't just take that role and put their name in a box and feel good. They have to participate. They have to be aware of what's going on, and they have to shoulder, that change. I think as well, change is difficult. So we like to, offer our delivery in what an organization can absorb. A smaller organization can run much more quickly than a larger organization. So we look, to define what is the final outcome and goal that we want to be. We chunk that down into consumable bites, and we make sure we have the right people support that at the right speed that you can go. And that's also where we involve organizational change management folks that can communicate the message, that can help people along. We can create the proper support structure for training. And we really encourage our customers to co-lead that or lead that with our support, because at the end of the day, the project is ours to do jointly. But when we're at go live and past hypercare, it's your system that you need to own and run. So we look for involvement, across the board on that front. And probably important as well is, we're finding customers that the business is running up and saying, we want AI, we want AI. What does that mean? How's your data? How are things today? And the first step for us to achieve that is really to get the speed of real-time accurate insights and data in their hands. And I know SAP's been spending a lot of time to kind of package up their offering around that. And we're watching that very closely. We're an early leader in that side of the analytics, but it's not just deploying the analytics, but it's looking at the data that exists. Reporting on something much faster on bad data doesn't help, right? So
Yeah.
in our mind, when we come out of a transformation, part of that goal is to make sure we give our customers the information that they need to run their business, as I said earlier, from wherever they are on the planet, or if they're collectively in the office, that they all have the same information as well.
Yeah, you mentioned AI, and that's certainly a hot topic. How are you advising your clients to incorporate AI into their ERP strategies? Like, what does that look like as you're embarking on this journey, and that we have this kind of emerging technology?
Start simple, start pragmatically. I know SAP has several entitlements that they offer when you take a new order to go to an S4 release. Geez, there's not one answer. There's not one answer. I think there's baby steps, starting, as I said, with making sure you have the right insights and the right data at your hands, to then make sure that historic data, looking back to do a trend analysis, is accurate. Simon, I know we see some of these things predominantly coming out of that public cloud side of things because it's so standardized. Adoption's there. I'm not saying that it isn't. I'm just saying most of our customers have a long journey before they're ready to truly unleash the power of AI.
Yeah, I agree, Rick.
Yeah, go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, and I mean, some of it's, it is very organizational dependent. Some organizations are already pushing down the AI path in their Microsoft suite, right? With Copilot, and that's taking effect through the organization. So they're a little bit more mature on the AI path, as mature as you can be on the AI path, I guess. And that helps with adoption, right? Because it becomes a lot more familiar. And some organizations are still faxing out purchase orders, right? So, there's a little bit more growth there to sort of get somebody to trust the technology, understand what AI can really do with them.
Yeah, and I think you said it well, Simon. I think a lot of it has to do with just knowing your organization, right? Is AI, part of your strategy and a good fit for your organization and your culture. So I think, that can definitely kind of weigh into, how much you lean into that and how quickly, right? Again, if anybody has any questions or any topics that we haven't covered, happy to jump into those. In the meantime, I'd like to, make this real, right? We've said a lot of things. It's, sounds great, but, can you give us some examples of some real clients that you guys have worked with that have benefited, from, what we've been talking about, and really getting those benefits to remain competitive, in today's climate?
Yeah, I'll start off, Rick, and jump in any time, right? It's the thing about, we do a lot of work in the chemicals company, in chemicals area, right? This is part of our background. Anybody that's involved in chemicals knows it's a fairly dynamic environment, right? Everybody's sort of spinning off this, taking a different strategy, acquiring that because that suits their strategy. A lot of the big chemical companies have very large, complex, highly customized ECC or earlier SAP systems. So one of our customers was spun off from a very large chemical organisation here recently, right? That came with a lot of the technical debt I talked about earlier. It had enormous amounts of customization, a lot of ancillary systems that made great sense when you're in a fantastically large organization, but when you trim that down to a much smaller organization, may not make as much sense. And these sort of transactions happen very rapidly, right? So it's not like, yeah, I've got 2 or 3 years to get out of it. Normally by the time the deal is actually inked in public, you may have 12 months. So you need to get in there and get moving pretty quickly, right? So we partnered up with that organisation. They chose an SAP platform to go forward with, very common in the chemicals industry, right? It allowed them to drop some of the technical debt, drop some of the customization, drop some of the old, tribal practices and processes that were built up over the years, get back towards standard SAP process while still retaining some very industry specific and very industry needed functionalities. That allowed them to come onto a modern platform, right? It got rid of a lot of their technical debt, and it also puts them in a position where they can now leverage and go ahead, right? So that was driven by a necessity to move, but they took the opportunity to look at their strategy, work out they needed a good modern platform, what would support their critical processes, renew those up there, so they're now ready to jump, and the next thing in the market, they're ready to take on that innovation and run.
Yeah, and this is Paige. Simon, I have a quick question, and I think you touched on it a little bit, right? Just in that example with the customer getting rid of technical debt, ability to remain competitive. But I guess just overall, when you're working with these customers and they're, asking what is the ROI that they can get through a project like this? I mean, typically, what are you seeing across your customer base?
Oof. Again, very consulting answer, right? Depends on the organisation. ROI, what terms would you like to talk about ROI, Paige? Everybody has a slightly different thing, right? Payback periods. We're talking fairly short, right? Where some of this stuff is 1 to 2 years at most. Mm-hmm. Another example, there was and we're speaking about this at a conference coming up, a small acquisition, overseas entity, had a retail base for a large sort of colorants and paints company. They wanted to bring him into the SAP fold. Their systems were interesting, to say the least, right? So the fact that we could get them up onto something in 5 months or so that standardized, is useful for the is familiar with the organization, can fold into their existing infrastructure, your return on investment on something like that is months.
Yeah, and I think my experience of talking with customers and organizations, like just making that business case internally, right? Like, how do you get the organization on board? I think is always a challenge that folks have, is almost the selling of it internally, and I think that's something that people have challenges internally navigating.
Yes, moving to the cloud. I think most organizations should be familiar with the cloud. There's still a few holdouts out there. But getting rid of servers and server cycles and server maintenance and all the data infrastructure that goes around that and the people that have to maintain it and so on. There's a pretty quick payback in a lot of this cloud stuff, right? You can take some very good people that are sitting there and churning away, just keeping lights on, and focus them on innovation. That's a very hard thing to measure on a pure ROI basis until you get down to that project by project, right? But taking your internal knowledge and get them to focus on your strategy, that's your real value here, right?
Yeah, I agree. I forget who it was I was talking to, but the ability to kind of take your same team and allow them to be more strategic, is always, it's an ROI. It's one that's hard to quantify, to your point. But to be able to kind of do more strategic things with your current team is something that I think some organizations do overlook. Any other use cases you guys want to walk through? Happy to keep going.
I had a quick question too. Just kind of talking about different ways of looking at ROI. I think kind of operational efficiency and automation goes along with kind of that AI talk track. So can you just talk a little bit about how like ERP driven automation can help that, how, that can be utilized to make your company more operationally efficient?
Yeah, good point, Marianne. I mean, obviously, automating your process using AI. There's a lot of surrounding architecture to these systems these days that you wouldn't have the opportunity to exploit the attached technology in automate your processes. So a simple example, SAP BTP has a pile of stuff out there, right? There's a service out there called Docs. If you're looking for a simple document recognition type process, you can bolt this in a number of weeks, right? You're not going out there going through a whole document, a system selection process, and then getting specialists in and all the rest of it. With your SAP team, your partner, you can enable that service out there, build up the use case pretty quickly and push it into your system rapidly, right? This can take away things like people's, a great example I've seen recently, right? People are still getting emailed or faxed purchase orders. I want to buy X from you. Then somebody would have to get the piece of paper, go to the keyboard, punch it in, right? You can still have that same person, right? They get it, they can feed it through the system. It transfers that information, you validate it. One, it's generally more accurate, and two, it's faster, right? Just because it's happening digitally in the background. That's a simple example. Machine learning has been around for quite some time. That's one of the other legs of AI, right? Looking at your maintenance areas, predictive type stuff, huge value in that. I'm a big hard industries guy in my years before SAP, so building, mining, manufacturing, and having that future sight on saying, hey, you've been running this machinery for a while, you've been putting this, this type of throughput through it, this type of product through it, based on what we've seen in the past, if you don't do something shortly, you're going to have a failure. That stuff's enormous value to an organisation. Take that predictive over and looking at it from a supply chain point of view, looking at natural fluctuations in the market, feeding market data in and market statistics in for that to generate, say, hey, maybe now is an opportune time to go and do some spot buying in a market, or throwing up some red flags about the availability of certain products or components based on some other external factors that are feeding into it. Critical to the business to get that little bit of an advantage.
And I would argue a lot of our customers that realize that improvement, whether that's in the pharma space or in the chemical space or food, high tech, these almost feel like AI wins. And we've heard the business say, "Oh man, I wish we had AI previously," right? So I know that there was some interest in the folks that are joining, to glean value in AI. We look for those all the time. But as software people, we look at that and say, it's not exactly AI, but there's always efficiency gains that we look for to help our customers when we analyze how they're running their business. And again, those inefficiencies, whether it's scanning stuff in automatically or somebody, just checking it or actually keying it, that may not come out of a DDA, right? That comes out of a trusted, what I would consider us more of a business consulting partner, that we sniff around and can find out, well, gee, usually we see this over here. Let's go look. Yep, we can validate that that's also happening, because we stay within certain industries and identify where those inefficiencies exist, which helps Simon and team then deploy, process or technology or integrate with third parties to help realize some of those valuable wins.
Thanks, Rick. And I think, those are all kind of useful, anecdotes and stories. And really, the point of us coming together today is just to be able to have this conversation, just very, very naturally and sharing our experience and our knowledge. I think too often we tend to kind of stay in our silos. So just to kind of come together with other like-minded people is great. And certainly, Rick, Simon, and the extended reply team, you guys have a lot of years of experience, and you've seen a lot. I'm sure the good, the bad, the ugly over the years. So I would love for you to kind of share as we kind of start to wrap up a bit today. What piece of advice would you give to people that are listening in? Whether they're just now getting started or maybe even in the middle of a transformation. What advice would you give to someone in their seat?
I mean, I've had this one for years, right? And all sorts of anecdotes around it, but I won't bore everybody today. Keep an open mind, right? And ask the whys, not the why nots, right? It's really simple to come up with all the why nots, right? That isn't going to get you. That isn't going to bring your business to the next level. It's not going to get you to your strategy, right? You have to ask the whys. Why shouldn't I do this? Well, let's go and do that. Let's push forward, right? Don't take that negative mindset. Right? Look for a solution that gives you the opportunity. And typical guidelines around that. If you're looking for a solution, right, you want something agile, you want something scalable, you want something that's easily used by your business. But focus on the reason why you really should be pushing down the path, not the reason why not. That's my big one, Rick.
Simon, you're strategic, so I went tactical. If you haven't started making your master data perfect, start now. You're behind.
Yes.
That's number one. It's all about the data. And part of what Simon said, think end to end. It's very easy to think about what's wrong with your job, but it may help or impact others. So we strongly encourage cross-department conversations around inefficiencies to see where they exist. And start early. Don't rush into this. Don't join a sales pitch from somebody and think this third-party software that you can buy on your credit card is going to fix your problem. Really start to investigate, identify those inefficiencies, and find a trusted partner. We all have jobs to do. I know that the Reply brand may not be known to everybody on the call, but we really, if you look on my LinkedIn or Simon's, which is filled with really customers that we work with, not high school friends and buddies, that's our professional network. That's our professional business card. Every one of those customers won't just say, yeah, that was our SI. We're business experts that can understand how to run your business. The solution typically is an SAP product, of course, coming from us. But I think it's important not just to have code monkeys that don't understand your business, that program your system in a customized way. Talk to people like us that can think large and wide with you.
Yeah, I think anytime you embark on, a big project or transformation, it really is an opportunity to ask yourself why. There's a woman on my team, she loves Simon Sinek's book, Start with the Why. And I think I probably butchered his last name, but I think that's a really good point. And why are we doing this? And is this really the best way to do it? And it's an opportunity to maybe course correct some decisions that were, are outdated or maybe not the best given, where your business is at today. So I think that's really great advice. I think also, my personal advice would be, leverage, whether it's face-to-face events or virtual events like this to network and talk to people, that have done it before. Someone coming out of it would be like, gosh, if I knew what I know now, I would have done this way. You can learn from those experiences. You don't have to make those same mistakes or even validate that you're on the right path, right? So I think, in this industry and in this space, the ability to connect and network with others who've been there before is important as well. All right, we're coming up on time. So again, if there are any additional questions or topics that you all want to discuss, happy to stay on and do that. I do want to thank both Simon and Rick for joining us today. Oh, we have a question.
It's very excited.
Very exciting.
Wait, didn't
Yes, the question is, are you partnering with Oracle Fusion Cloud, Oracle EBS for any AI automations, and can you provide some AI use cases where you might have already implemented? It might be something we want to take offline and follow up separately, Rick.
We can, yeah. I mean, Oracle is not in our Simon and I's direct responsibility. However, within the 15,000 people in Reply, we do have Oracle talent, so I'd be happy to take that question and follow up with you individually.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions before I start another talk track and then have to interrupt myself excitingly? All right. Well, like I was saying, I want to thank everyone who joined us today. From the Ascensource team, we've had the pleasure of working with the Reply team for almost a year now. And I do want to comment on how dedicated you guys are to making your clients successful. You very much are, one of the partners who focuses and stays in your lane. And if it's not something that you guys are capable of delivering on, you're not going to take on that project. And I think that's, really refreshing in our industry to have, a company with that kind of lens. And I think that comes from, a great company culture internally as well. And that just kind of oozes out. So I know it's weird, Rick, I'm giving you a compliment, but kudos for all that you guys do to kind of have that culture.
We enjoy what we do, genuinely.
Yeah.
But we had a consultant that said, I don't know, can you go out and market that we care for free? And that's exemplified and driven by Simon and myself.
Yeah. I do have on the event or on the slide right now some events that are coming up that the Reply team is going to be at. Like I mentioned, I think just the power of connection and networking is important. So the team has a webinar on May 13th. A lot of us are going to be, if you're in the SAP ecosystem or, considering going down that path. We do have Sapphire coming up in May in Orlando. All of us will be there. So if you're there, please share. We'd love to at least get you on the invitation list for some of the events we're doing. And then as well, the Reply team's going to be out at the SAP Insider next week. And you've got two presentations. It looks like you're going to be working with doing a co-presentation with Delron Chemical as well as Benjamin Moore. So if anyone on the line is going to be there, strongly encourage you to join the session and stop by the booth.
Yeah, and not to overdrive the commercial, and thanks for putting that together for us. But I know I notion towards the business, kind of getting a handle around what's available. That SAP Insider webinar that's published there, that really is the crux of getting your data organized and in a way that it's consumable. And really, we see SAP's Business Data Cloud as the platform for driving future AI. So that's a big push for us with our customers to get ready really to harness the value and the capabilities of AI. So please join that one if you can. And if you're in Vegas, yes, myself, Sarah, that's also here, we'll have a team of 6 or 8 of us. Please come by and talk to us or let us know if you're at Sapphire.
Awesome. All right. With that, I will turn it to Simon for any kind of closing final thoughts as we wrap up.
I guess the first thing is like my old Italian skiing instructor would say to me, be brave, as he launched me down some ridiculous slope. Right, but guys, don't be afraid of upsetting the norms, right? And challenging stuff that you do in your business. That's really important. SAP do have some great solutions out there for you. And I think when you dig into it, you'll be quite surprised. And of course, I've got to put in a plug. Rick would never let me off. Give us a call if you're thinking about it. We're at these conferences. If you want to drop by the booth and just have a chat and talk about it, bounce some ideas off us, please, come and talk to us. More than happy to share a few minutes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you again, everyone, for giving your time today. It was really a pleasure. We'll be following up with the recording and some links to the events that we shared. So again, thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you.